On Wigan CCG's Twitter account, there are tweets offering health warnings and advice to the public. How has the platform of social media helped the NHS inform and interact with the public, and has it made it easier?
It's an additional tool to do it. So we still use the traditional tools of the traditional media. So Wish FM, we go to Wish FM with messages that we need to get out quickly. We use the newspaper a lot, but it makes it instantaneous. So if we've got a message we want to get out and get out there quickly, we can do that easiest through social media. What we find and what we know is if there was to be a disaster or there's an epidemic going on, most people would go on social media to have instant conversations with their friends and to find out information. So if we weren't on there, we wouldn't be past that, and there might be misinformation out there. So one of the main reasons we're on there is to make sure that we can keep feeding a positive and truthful conversation around a lot of the stuff.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. What problems has social media caused in regards to interacting with the public?
We have a few people who we have a number of people who experience very poor healthcare, and that is totally unacceptable. What social media does is gives them an outlet to tell the world about that, and that is totally appropriate. However, from a communications and marketing point of view, that's very difficult to handle, and trying to make sure that we can respond properly, which can't be done properly through social media because of the character lengths and stuff like that. We try and pull those conversations into so we'd get them in, or we'd speak to them over the phone, we'd pull them off the social media site, but it's mainly because of the constrictions of the kind of conversations we have. So that makes it more difficult. You're expected to be on there 24/7 as well, which we don't work 24/7. Not the NHS does, but the marketing team certainly don't. And my marketing comms team is this, so we handle it between two of us. So when people tweet us at 11 o'clock at night, if I happen to have my phone and it clicks up, then I'll respond if I can.
Yeah.
But that interferes with my life on a constant basis, and I'm not required to do it. So, but if I'm out drinking, then obviously I'm not going to, so they're going to have to wait. They might not understand that waiting is just unfortunately part of the way we do it. So whilst we put on there, we're on 9 till 5 Monday to Friday, that's not true.
Yeah.
And it doesn't also restrict people's expectations, so we find that difficult as well.
Are there any problems with people using it inappropriately? Trolls, things like that?
We haven't had any. We have a couple of people who like to wind us up on social media and try and deliberately push some buttons to get some responses.
Yeah.
They've got their own agendas, and they want to get it out there. But I wouldn't say that we've had any trolls. I suspect it happens across the NHS, but not for us.
All right. Has social media made interacting with the public less expensive?
Yes, it has, I would say, because there's less cause for us to put adverts out in the newspaper.
Yeah.
And they've got less of a cause to be constantly trying to sell us things. In the NHS, we're pretty backwards on social media in general. Some places are better than others. So we will still often run dual campaigns. So we'll be offline as well as online. I think in the future, as we get better at social media, we'll have even less stuff offline, offline, pushing money resources further. And making the money go more. So yes, it has, although not as much as it could do.
Okay. This is maybe where we're going to start to overlap with the questions. In the past, the NHS has used publications, newspapers, and more recently the internet to convey information. What are the differences with using these more traditional methods and using social media? I guess you've kind of answered.
Engagement. It's all about engagement, really, the difference between the two. Because when we put something out in a newspaper or we put something out on the radio, we have no idea what people are saying back to that. We don't get a response. If we put something out on social media, if someone cares about it, they'll respond. And that engagement, that immediate engagement, is really powerful, because if someone responds to something, it gets fed straight back into the CCG. If someone tells us something on social media, it goes straight into the processes. If it's a quality issue, then it's fed into our quality team. If they need a number, then we get it for them.
Right.
Whereas through traditional media, you can't have that two-way conversation, and that is the best part of it, and that's what it adds. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does, yeah. With different people logging on at different times of the day, do you tailor the post to target a particular audience depending on the time?
We should do. To a certain extent we do. If we're putting health advice out, we try and schedule it so it arrives at the times we know people will be online.
Yeah.
A lot of our stuff is corporate information, and we'll just put it out as it's happening. So yes and no. A lot of it is down to resources, how much we can actually tailor that kind of stuff. We use Hootsuite, which I'm sure you'll know, social media management tool, to make sure that we can schedule appropriately. But a lot of it is just done from the phone when I'm in a meeting. Something interesting happens, we put it out there. We're at an event, something a message you want to get out, we put it out. Because that's real time is also a benefit of social media.
Okay. Currently, if a patient wishes to raise concerns or complain about their treatment, they can phone or write to the Patient Advice and Liaison Service. Is it possible social media may be used to garner feedback quicker in future?
I think it will be. We're not there yet, and I don't think the hospital are there yet. We do get complaints through social media, and what we do is say, really sorry to hear that, can you please call this number to give us more information? But I think that will always be the case because of patient identifiable information. What we don't want is people sharing with the world their name and what's wrong with them and all those conditions and things. We want, because it's our job to protect their information. Now if they choose to share it, that's their right, but we will still try and protect them from having to do that. So I think it will be an entrance in, but there will still be away from social media.
Different layers. There's just been an app launch called Instagram for Doctors, where doctors can send pictures of illnesses to other doctors for advice. Do you think in future something similar could be used for patients, where they might send pictures of their illness or speak to someone for advice via social media, if they wished to do so?
Yeah, I think. I've not heard of that GP app, so that's an interesting one. I suspect there's already stuff out where they can do that and seek advice from other people. Whether they'll be able to do it for doctors, yes, we're definitely going that way. At the moment in Wigan, we're trying to set up trials where people can use FaceTime and just to show their GP the rash rather than having to go into the surgery.
That's what I mean. So that's already in the pipeline.
We're just in the process of setting up those kind of things because we think it'll save time and we think it'll save money. I mean, we can see more patients and stop people from having to come into the surgeries. So we're trialling those kind of things at the minute.
Okay, cool. Do you think it's possible there may be a social media-based facility where people can contact the NHS about an emergency?
I think it's a possibility. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Obviously, we have a lot of... By emergency, do you mean someone having a heart attack or do you mean a bomb goes off?
I don't know. I didn't really think about it.
Because I think in terms of if a major disaster, then I think yes, we'll have a social media set up immediately where people can feed into us and we'll feed straight back out. I think that is a very real possibility. I think the heart attack one, because of the manning of it and because we would then be competing for resources with the phone lines and the traditional 999, I think I can see that there would be some issues with that. And with the phone, the person on the other end of the line can do some triaging. Okay, well, does this really need an ambulance? Is this a hoax? How soon do they need the ambulance? Whereas tweeting in, I'm having a heart attack, I need someone. Well, you might not be, which a person on the end of the line will be able to distinguish and say, okay, well, actually that person over there is really having a heart attack, and you're having heart pain, and they can make that so you need an ambulance within 2 minutes and you need an ambulance within 4 minutes. Whereas through social media, that'd be a lot more difficult. So I can see it in the long run when social media develops and it becomes a bit more conversational immediately. Because there'd still be a slight time lag with Twitter, and I think the 140 characteristics would set something off. And on Facebook, there's an even longer time lag, so it feels instantaneous, but really, it's not the same as having someone on the phone. I can see it happening, but probably not within 10 years. Technology needs to move on, and the NHS needs to get braver before we can do that.
Okay, there's one final question. If in future organisations such as the NHS do begin to rely more on digital platforms to interact with the public, which seems inevitable, what problems do you think this may cause for people, perhaps children or older people who might not be technologically advanced?
It's something we're already facing. We do a lot online, so we drive people into websites. So how do older people get that information? I think the NHS will always have to provide alternative methods to social media because we have to be accessible to everybody. So the problems it will cause are more likely to be for the people in my job trying to make sure we still hit all those old-fashioned targets than the people out there. And trust me, whenever anyone says, well, that'll be online, they go, well, can I have a paper copy of it? There's always somebody who says that, so you're never allowed to forget it. I think some of the issues, I suppose, might come with things like when we're starting to move over to where you can book online appointments. So one of the questions we have is what percentage of appointments do we make online versus what percentage do we keep off so that people can ring in, and does that reflect? How do we make sure that reflects the actual usage? So most people who go into GP practices traditionally, it's the older generation who need more NHS services. That's obvious, isn't it? But they're less likely to use the internet. They still do, but they're less likely, and there'll be more that don't. So do we work out that percentage and take a guess and take that percentage out of the online booking system? Or do we say, okay, well actually we really want to try and drive that, so we're going to take out a smaller percentage, but then does that cause problems for access and for the number of appointments that's available to the people who aren't online? So these are the kind of questions that are coming out in the woodwork now, and when we go to people being able to access their own health information online, which is coming in the next couple of years, rather than having to go down to practice and request it, then that will cause problems. People having the right to the information, so they'll be able to get it, but it'll be more difficult. And I think that will be true going forward. If you're not online, getting the information will be possible, but more difficult.